Exeter is known for its ancient buildings, initially founded by the Romans when they arrived in the southwest of England in around 50 CE, created on the site of a fort known to the Romans as Isca. Today, Exeter is a small city like any other, however, it's got two advantages. It's full of rich history and it's also where I was born, so of course I had to do something about this place. Like I said, the city is known for its architecture, but perhaps the most interesting building of all within the city is the house that moved. Why is it called this? Because it quite literally moved in its entirety. No, it didn't grow legs and walk on its own and stomp down the street eating innocent people. That would be terrifyingly hilarious. But it was moved, and the story behind this move is quite fascinating. The house that moved is a Tudor building dated back to the 15th century, being estimated to have been built in around 1450, though no clear date can be specified and theories vary between the 14th and 16th centuries, so the 15th century is just a safe bet. There's no real surviving record because the building was really nothing special for its time. A regular 3-storey timber frame building that overhangs on the upper floors, a structure layout often seen in buildings from this time period. It's likely to be one of the oldest houses of its like in Devon. By the 1950s it had fallen into a state of disrepair, infested with woodworm, and slowly but surely crumbling into history. Anyway, in the 1950s, Exeter's city government began their plans to improve the flow of traffic, and one method of doing this was by constructing a bypass for the city centre. The street at which the house was built on was scheduled to be demolished in its entirety to make way for this bypass. Upon discovering this, local historians campaigned to save the house, that at the time stood at number 16 Edmund Street, and was known as Merchant House. This campaign was a success. The building was granted a protected status, and thus efforts had to be made to preserve it if possible. The government paid £10,000 thereafter to move the entire building to a new location. This led to a vacant lot on West Street, which was located roughly 220 feet, or 70 metres away. The reason for the lot on West Street being vacant in the first place was because of a 15th century house that once stood there, that was torn down in the 1940s due to the council's disinterest in saving it, and now another timber house that could have been even older was being moved into the spot where a building likely just like it once stood. To avoid damaging the building, the entire house was stripped to its frame, the windows were removed and then protected by a timber casing. The building was then jacked up onto metal wheels. In fear they'd cause damage, no iron bolts or screws would be used in the move of this £42,000 or 21-ton house. A framework made of timbers was installed instead to support the structure in case of sideways slippage, which added an extra 10 tons to the weight of the entire move. The slow-moving process began on the 9th of December 1961. On rails, the building took 6 days to be moved just 70 metres down the road. No doubt, this caused no small measure of disruption, as this blocked access to a couple of streets in the process. Frequently, checks were made to ensure the building still stood upright. Despite the 6-degree angle of the road, or a 1 in 10 gradient, the house was successfully moved to its new home without incident. Once it was set on its new foundations, the windows were reinstalled and the medieval wood was treated for woodworm to further preserve the building. Today, the house that moved is in use. Its upstairs are furnished with living areas that aren't in use, however the downstairs functions as a wedding dress shop. However, unfortunately, they didn't do any in Connor's size, so we couldn't get a look in. In fact, upon discovering this, I left Connor at home altogether to get some peace and quiet in my hometown. The house, now cemented in its new position, looks as if it's been there for centuries, but its 70-metre move makes it stand out as an interesting secret to explore when visiting Exeter.
See, I'm being well behaved and not clapping.
There you go, Dennis. You're in the shot now. We need Dennis in at all times. Dennis is part of this crew.
Denbis can be like this. He's actually in it.
Yep. And then you've got space to shift over, and then we've got Denbis, and it looks like we're far enough apart to not be called gay.
Hello, everyone, to the editorial part of the video. So, this melon decided to go all the way back to his hometown where they breed weird genetic things with webbed hands and 11 toes on each foot. And he decided to make a video about a fucking house.
Where did you think the webbed feet came from, bro? Like, they came from somewhere, mate. The reason why I did it was because, yes, it's my hometown, so maybe it's not actually that interesting, but also because this city is known for its architecture, like ancient. It's like originally a Roman city.
Yes.
So it was originally founded by Rome around 50 CE. So that's the best part of 2,000 years ago now, going on. And this house was initially meant to be demolished. Right, they were going to demolish it to make way for this bypass. Instead of like demolishing it, like archaeologists got a little bit het up about it. They were like, no, save the fucking gaff. So what they did was they petitioned to have it saved. In a nick of time, it was granted like a protected status. And so instead of demolishing the house as planned, the government had to pay £10,000 in 1961 to have the house moved 70 metres down the street. But the funniest part about it is it was moved into a position that was a vacant lot because they'd previously demolished a Tudor house just like it there.
So, in theory, they could have knocked this house down and just kept the other Tudor house.
No, the other one was already gone. It was a vacant lot by this point.
Right.
This one was granted protected status. And so they had to move it to make room for the bypass.
Fuck that one, we'll have that one, but we'll put that one there. It's like a game, like episode of Sims, isn't it, or something?
It's like just knocking down a gaff and then moving another one, yeah. It was like moving house in Minecraft, honestly. The thing is, though, about it, though, is it's a £42,000 house. It was 21 tons of just a house. They removed some of the outside bits, and then they just jacked it up onto wheels, attached it to rails, and sort of like hoisted it slowly up the road in about 6 days. The strangest part is, as it went, it blocked off certain roads, so people were like probably quite pissed off about it.
Why are you late for work? House.
Why are you 7 days late for work? Well, they weren't building a house, they were moving it.
I'm just going to move house, love.
I'm just going to move house. But no, this sort of like method of moving structures, while it's not unheard of, it's a bit interesting to see a structure move just like jacked up onto wheels and moved in its entirety.
Especially building of that age as well.
Yeah, no,
it was more fragile.
It was in a fucking state as well. It wasn't in the best of conditions. Like, it was very much so fucked. It had woodworm. It was around, at the time, 500 years old.
It's still worth saving. Again, like Tudor buildings as part of our national heritage, isn't it? But kind of Tudor lineage, like Henry VIII, slashing up them wives, kind of, or like, original Henry Tudor, which was...
Yeah, it was built around 1450. Oh. Though, to be fair, because it was such an unremarkable house at the time, it's hard to say exactly when it was actually built. Like, it could have been 14th century, it could have been 16th century.
Yeah, so there's a lot of wiggle room into
there's a lot of but the estimates put it at 1450. Obviously, when the house was set in its new place, they concreted it down to make it look like it always lived there, and it doesn't look kind of flush.
Yeah.
It looks like it's always been there, but no, it was actually another Tudor building that was demolished that was there before it. And then they moved it 70 metres down the street so that they could build a road. To bypass the town centre, it had a logic behind it. They didn't just go, I want to build another road, let's demolish this house. No.
The thing is, it's not like they were building a railway line where it has to take a predetermined path. They could just go, tell you what, we'll just make the road go around this building and put like 10-mile-per-hour signs either, instead of like moving the road, which probably would have been a bit cheaper, they decided to just go, fuck it, move the house.
I think they were planning to demolish not the house specifically. I think it was the entire road.
Yeah, the path that it was on.
It was the entire path it was on. They were gonna demolish the entire road just to get rid of just to make way for this bypass for the town centre of Exeter. But what I think is especially entertaining about this entire thing is when it was set down in its new home, they had to then treat it for woodworm, like it was in a fucking state. So they went, right, we'll wait until a week and we'll do it then.
So is it now like still dilapidated or is it restored?
Well, the upstairs is like a it's properly furnished with like a bedroom, a bathroom, etc. Nobody lives in it, but I think it's been furnished so that there's something in there. I don't actually know why, because it's not exactly open to the public. It's not occupied, at least as far as I can tell. And then the ground floor is actually, last I heard, a wedding dress shop.
Really?
Yeah. So the ground floor's a shop, like it's rented out as a shop, so you can run a shop in the house that moved.
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's its name. It's the house that moved. Like it's known around Exeter as the house that moved, and I've been past it so many times, and you don't bat an eye until you've got a fucking camera. And you're like, right, this is cool.
You see, when you said it's a house that moved, I've just imagined some little shanty house in the middle of buttfuck nowhere
on wheels that moved.
It just moved out the way and they built a road, but it's actually in the centre of Exeter, isn't it?
It's actually in the centre of Exeter.
Oh, God, yeah. I bet you look so odd walking around with your GoPro, like Francis Bourgeois. Oh, look at me! Oh.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see. It's Exeter. It's a bit of a booky end, and most people don't know what it is I'm holding because the webbed hands stop them from operating such equipment.
Perfect for a flood, though.
I'll be surrounded with people, and they'll be like, "He's the Messiah. I love him." That's going to be fantastic. But
if you bring out any kind of technology, they stand back and hiss.
They stand back and hiss, don't they? The farmer gets his shotgun and goes, "All right." Yeah, no. So it's a house that quite literally moved.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. It's a house that moved. If they moved a house, they moved a house. Do you not understand? They moved a house.
Yeah, I know. Were like the houses next door to it demolished, or did they have to like lift it up, move it actually into the street, then move it down, then put it back?
They would have lifted it up onto wheels very slowly. And that would have taken like the best part of a couple days. And then they would have got it onto these wheels and hoisted up on rails that they'd set out to the new location. And then they would have lifted it up again and slowly set it down onto the foundations which had been set. And then they would have just set it in place to make it look like it had always been there. The rest of the houses on the street, if they weren't protected, they would have been demolished. And since this is the house that moved, not a house that moved, you think, maybe the other buildings on the street were demolished. Yeah,
they weren't King Henry VIII era. Don't worry, that's protected. But Elizabeth I, yeah, that's pretty cool. We'll knock them ones down.
Yeah, I suppose in the 1950s to 1960s that kind of structure would have been unremarkable, though. It's like a lot of Tudor houses would have been demolished beforehand.
Yes.
Like, it's very much so when they become more rare that they get that protected status because there isn't an entire street of them.
Yes.
But if there's an entire street of, like, big brick buildings that look all the same as each other, with massive chimneys and shit, you're gonna demolish a few of those. You won't miss them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Manchester, for instance, all the mills in the area, up until about the mid-2000s, they started getting like protective status, what's it called? Do you want a building gets a code? It's like first, second, and third.
I don't know anything about that one.
Listed buildings.
Listed buildings.
Yeah. Some of the old mills in the area become listed buildings.
Yeah, no, that's probably sort of what happened with this house that moved. It was a last minute thing. Like, it was so very close they were going to demolish it, and then archaeology. It wasn't last minute, but it was getting go
close
time.
To the bone. Yeah.
Yeah, it was close to the bone, and archaeologists started to. They didn't care before, but they started to cry about it. Like, this house is heritage and all that, and
they probably started to cry about it because they realised that it was under threat.
Yeah, no, that they learned that it was about to be. That it was planned to be demolished, and they went right. They sprung into action, saved the building, and inconvenienced the government, and the government had to then move. Well, they had to attempt to move it safely. They didn't have to move it. They didn't have to ensure that it doesn't get damaged.
Yeah, if they tried to move it, if they moved it and it fell to bits, that's fair enough.
That's that.
Yeah,
if that's what happened, that is that. But no, it went up. It was. I think the angle was about 6 degrees on the road. So it was surprising that it managed to go through the 6 days. That 70 minutes.
Instead of it being flat, it's on a raise, and
it's on a little bit of a raise or a little.
So all the stresses move inside the building.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, it went up there without a problem. Like they were checking it to make sure it was upright, to make sure there's no slippage, all that, and it just got up, no problem, into its new home, and that's where it's been ever since.